Greetings, fellow Vulcan survivors. Rodamon here. Thank you for tuning in to Stationeers Brutal Vulcan. Episode 10, Automating Refreshing My Base Coolant. So the current priority right now is to fire up water making. I'm going to describe that very, very, very simply. Fire up water making. We're going to make our first batch of water. Onyx, thank you for the resub. And Xanth, too, if I missed it. So, to walk you through the system, we have got oxygen in here and hydrogen in here. The oxygen and hydrogen are at the same temperature in a 2-to-1 ratio, roughly speaking. Oh, god damn it. And we're going to mix them into fuel to feed the H2 combustor. So an H2 combustor takes volatiles and oxygen mixed. Yep. And combusts it into water. So it outputs a considerable amount of waste heat, which is why it's outside. And it's also less than perfectly efficient, which is fine. But yeah. I'm going to double check the fuel mix. It is a 2-to-1 ratio of vols to oxygen. Okay, and I'm going to double check that the gas mixer is set correctly. So input 1 is volatiles. Input 2 is oxygen. Input 1 is 67. Input 2 is 33. So that is correct. So then this thing, if we fire it up for a second, has combined it into 2/3 volatiles, 1/3 oxygen already. And it came out the right ratio because the input gases are the same temperature. I took steps to make sure that the input gases were the same temperature with the radiator. All right, so now we have fuel ready to feed the combustor. So let's do that next step. And it's not going kaboom because we didn't ignite it. There's no source of ignition in that pipe. There is something in the game called a pipe igniter. Pipe igniter would ignite fuel in a pipeline. I don't know why you would want that in this setup. You wouldn't, because that would explode. But yeah. So we have the fuel right here, ready to be combusted by the H2 combustor. So the H2 combustor turns on, and as you can see, it's turning that fuel into massively hot volatiles, carbon dioxide, oxygen, pollutant, and mostly steam. There's a little bit of liquid water in here, but it's mostly steam. Right? It is 35% steam, 3% liquid water. So it's not going to rupture. And I don't have an inline tank for this system, which I might want to get. But there you go. So now we have this massively hot steam to be filtered by the oxygen filter, or the water filter inside. So that we only, because the other gases are really hot and kind of worthless. And there's only a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of oxygen, and it's really not worth recapturing, in my opinion. Right, there's a less than a mole. There's a 0.04 oxygen in this. And that oxygen is 2,000 degrees. So yeah, I am leaking oxygen in the system, but like not enough that I care. So now we turn this thing on. And this is now dumping the, well, okay, it would help if I plugged it in. Okay. Now what this is doing is it's filtering out that steam and also water into a tank and dumping everything else out to Vulcan. So now we have steam here, and the temperature, as you can see in the steam, is dropping because there's radiators that allows it to convect its temperature out to Vulcan, and Vulcan is colder than this steam. Because the steam is just that hot. Okay, so that part's done. As a result, the coolant loop here is soon going to be used in the last stage of this, the condensation chamber. So let's get out and start condensing water. Because right now it's steam and I can't drink steam. The water that is higher than like 50 degrees Celsius is dangerous to us. Which is crazy because like I like my coffee and tea hotter than that, but like whatever. It's just game mechanics at play. But obviously potatoes are going to die if you feed it. So now we have this steam in this tube and coolant in this tube. And we turn this bad boy on and we get liquid water. And this is going to be mostly liquid. A little bit of gas escapes the system. But as it pressurizes, it will mostly be liquid. So it's turning that 99.9% steam into 86% water. And this water is like not super hot because this coolant is working hard. This coolant is really working to try to keep it cool. Well, there we go. We have 1/3 of a liter of water already. So we fired up our water making. What I'm going to do is add a power console for water making. And that's going to allow us to control the entire system on the inside, from the inside. Before I do that, I ought to get my labeler so I can label the things. So water, coolant, air conditioner, water filtration, H2 filtration, O2 filtration, CO2 filtration, base air conditioner, the old gas mixer. Okay. That's a good start. So in order for this next little console thing, I'm going to need a console. So iron, copper, gold. I'm also going to need glass. I'll stick the switch right here. Yeah, here's fine. And I'm also going to want a power console, a power control board. Now, I'm going to hook up the water filter to this too, because technically that's part of the loop, the water making loop. But I'm intentionally not doing the fuel mixer because I want to control the amount of fuel that I put in. So on this power control board, it's going to be the water filter, the condensation chamber, and the H2 combustor. Those three objects don't need a lot of power. It's like 30 watts. So it's not super needed, but like if I don't need them on, why keep them on, in my opinion? But I will do a network analyzer just to prove that to you. And then I need my data disk. So, proving it to you first. We've got... Let's see. Oh my goodness. All right, there's the water coolant air conditioner at 10 watts, the H2 combustor at 10 watts, the condensation chamber at 50 watts, and the water filter at 10 watts. So it's a power sipper. It's really not power hungry, but I'm gonna link them up anyway. So condensation chamber. Oh, let's name this console too. I'm just gonna call it the water console. All right. And then we want the combustor. And the water filter. And now when I want to turn them off, I just hit the button. As you can see, they turned off. Turn them on, they turn on. So I can control the entire system from a switch from inside, so I don't need to go outside. And I've so at this point what I want to do is I have a lot of oxygen that is stuck in my waste tanks. But at the moment, all of the oxygen and hydrogen is at the correct temperatures for more water making. So I want to make a full batch of water. Basically, I'm going to run my gas fuel mixer until I'm all out of oxygen. And then once I'm done with that, I will set up the system to recapture the oxygen tank from the oxygen from my waste tanks and passively capture the oxygen from the farm. So current priority right now is to make a big batch of water. So I've got 230 moles of oxygen left to combust. Yep, let's eat. And then we need to temperature treat that water that's coming out because it's going to be hot. And then I'll have to then I'll be able to stop stealing water from my potatoes. So make a big batch of water. And cool it. So my plan is to have my breathing room eventually be here. I like that kind of layout. I'll have like a 2x2 where I'll have like a refrigerator and all that jazz. So what I want to do is I want to bring the water that I'm making here in insulated pipes, so it doesn't warm up against the temperature of Vulcan, and feed it over. I'll feed it over to my base for now. So I'll feed it to like this corner here, where it's in between inside and outside. I want it partially in the base so I can radiate the heat away to bring the temperature of the water to become the temperature of the base, so it's drinkable. Do plants consume water? They do, but very, very, very little. They sip water. Plants take about a 4,000th of the amount of water that the player does. So 4,000 plants equals 1 player. So they do take water, but like not a whole lot. Oh, it's an ash storm. Turn off. Do I have any more hydrogen that is fueling? I do. I'll turn this off too. Well, I'll have to repair my, So I turned off the system. Actually, this ash storm, I don't think I need to turn it off. My water, or steam rather, is still cooling. So I'm just gonna keep it going. Yeah. In that case, because I think I'm going to change, I'm going to make a big batch of water and automate. So I'm just going to call it make water and automate coolant. So in order to automate coolant, what I mean by that is the coolant dump air, this coolant line. What I want to do to this coolant line is I want to flush it every day and replace it every night. So for that, I'm going to want a gas sensor to be able to detect the temperature outside. Then I'm going to want a logic input, logic output, memory, and process. So the gas sensor will determine how hot it is outside. And then the logic input will then read that value. Then I'll compare that value with a processor to a value of memory, which sets the high temperature threshold, and then I'll do the writer. So two sensors, or one sensor, two logic I/O, one processor, one memory, and that's all it will take to do flushing. There's also one other thing. So that's the intake. For the flush, I will want another logic I/O. So I think you understand the intake, right? Basically, when the ambient temperature is lower than, let's say, 130 Celsius, suck air in. So I have a sensor to read the temperature, and then the logic to control that. For the flush, I think what I'll do, and let me flash this up again, is one way to do this is I'm going to have it be like, when the solar angle is less than 75, dump air. So what I'll do is I'll set up an active vent, which is pointing outwards to dump the air. So midday every day, I dump the air out. And every night, when it's cold, I suck the air in. And that way, my coolant tank will automatically refresh and reset its temperature roughly every day. And I'll tinker with it. I'm not really sure 75 is the right angle. Basically, I want to empty out the tank. I want to vent it all out. It does mean that the air conditioners will be inefficient for like a little bit of time every day. When I do that, between noon and sunset, they'll be really inefficient because there won't be a lot of... Yes, there is 275s. And that's why it's like an arc. It's going to be when it's less than 75. So between like, let's say 11 a.m. and 1 p.m., it dumps air out. Something like that. That's how I want to set it up. So one of these logic I/Os is to read the solar angle. And then I'll need two processors. One processor is to compare the ambient temperature, and the other processor is to compare the solar angle for the dump. And then I'll need two memories. One to write down the Kelvin temperature that I want to suck air in at, and the other one to compare the solar angle to a memory value of the angle that I want, which will be 75. So two processors, two memory, and I'll work on the logic. I'm talking about two different logic circuits. So I'm going to work on them separately so that it's not like confusing as hell. Can't I use the solar tracking solar angle? Yes, actually I could. I could use what I'm using for solar tracking, yeah. Which means I need one fewer logic IOs. And then it will also save me like 10 watts. All right, let's check on our fuel combustion. We still have about 100 moles of oxygen left. Eventually I'll have like pipe meters and everything to be able to efficiently read the... So I have 160 moles of steam to be processed. But I can't, from here, tell how much water I have stored in that tank. But I know that tank has a lot of volume, so it's not going to rupture or anything like that. Where to put the logic? Maybe I'll have the logic back here, on this back wall. I think that makes sense. So before I do that, let's clean up the floor. Okay. So let's set up a gas sensor outside. Ash storm be damned, I don't really care. Oh, I don't have my... Crap. Oh, it's only 88C outside. It's like frickin' cold as hell. Thanks, Ash Storm. I guess the Ash Storm is a really nice temperature thing. Sucks for my solar panels that are getting battered to hell, but really good for intakes. Alright, this is good enough. Stick it right there. It's gonna be, outdoor gas sensor. That way it's usable for whatever. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna need a lot more cables than I currently have. Also, in the ash storms, like, make sure you don't jump. Because, like, you don't know where you're going to end up. It's blowing me around pretty hard. Doesn't the gas sensor give pressure? It gives pressure and temperature. Gas sensor gives temperature, pressure, and gas ratios. It depends on what you read from it. While that's printing up, I'm just going to quickly check on the taters. My little happy spuds. So, we are at 23% oxygen at 70 kPa. It's probably almost breathable. Gonna raise it up, pressure a little bit. And these guys are growing moderately well towards fruiting. And while I'm standing here, I might as well top up my water. This may be one of the last times I have to use this bottle filler. Ooh, 19 days of survival. So I pressurized it a little bit more, and we'll get back to the logic. Ooh, God. Alright, Ash Storm, still going. As soon as the Ash Storm's done, I'm going to want to go out there and repair my solar panel so I can start generating power better. Because the solar panel's inefficient when the thing's broken. Alright, flicking that on and off. Before I go any further, I have about 3 moles of oxygen. That's close enough. Cool. So we ran the gas mixer. Oh, it's done. All right, let me. I'm gonna go fix the the panels, and then I'll come back inside and set the rest of this up because my battery ran low. Now, if I had a wind turbine, I could generate 20 kilowatts of power with the ash storm. So at some point, I'll set up a wind turbine for that purpose. But like, as long as I'm not having power problems, it's like pretty low on the priority list. And in order to repair these things, all I really have to do is disassemble them and reassemble them. Bit of a, I mean, I would call it an exploit, but it's like by game design, so I'm not cheating. It's just, you know, think of them as like maintenance or something. Okay, panels are repaired. So, the solar angle will be my grow light logic that I have got going on. So I'll try to use the grow light logic for this rather than setting up a new reader. So let's get this going. What is 130 Celsius to Kelvin? 403. Okay. So we're going to have memory here and memory here. This is going to be coolant max temp memory. I'm not going to bother with this one yet. Actually, let's do the intake for now. So what we want is a logic reader. Oh, sorry, logic reader. Just so that you can follow along a little easier. So here's a logic reader. And we're going to do a logic writer. The logic reader and writer will, the reader is going to take the gas temperature of outside. So I know how hot it is. So this thing is the temperature gauge. And if you got questions, just wait until the end. I'm not going to be fielding questions until I'm done. If the system doesn't make sense to you, you're only looking at a small fraction of it, so you got to wait until it's finished for it to make sense. I'm sure there'll be some questions, but once I'm done, I can try to answer them. Okay. So this thing is going to be the coolant outside temp logic reader. Very verbose. And its input is going to be the coolant. Oh, what is this? Yeah. Is that on a different network? I'll have to go check on that. I thought it would be still visible on the same network. Alright, 1 second. Also, while I'm out here, I could also check on the water. So, oh, this is called outdoor gas sensor. That's why I was looking for coolant. My bad. Alright, checking on this stuff. I still have fuel to be combusted, but we've made almost 5 liters of water. Not bad, not bad. Whoa, that was weird. Okay, so, logic reader. Go to the O's. outdoor gas sensor, and we're going to read the temperature. So right now it is 914 Kelvin outside. Got it. This memory is going to be the max temperature. This thing is going to be set to 403, which is about 130 Kelvin, or Celsius rather. Okay, and then we're going to want to do some math with a processor unit. Or honestly, a compare unit. So then what we're doing is we're comparing the outside temperature to the memory. And if it's less or greater than. So this is the coolant outside temp. This is the coolant outside math logic compare. What this thing is going to do is if the outside temp, which is the coolant outside temp logic reader, is less than the coolant max temp memory. If true, 1. If false, 0. Pretty straightforward. And then the logic writer. So this logic writer is going to be the intake valve. So this is the coolant. I'll just call it the coolant logic writer, or the coolant intake logic writer. And I'll rename these. The coolant intake there. So now they're all coolant intake. And this is going to be coolant outflow. But I'll do this one later, because they're two separate logics. All right, so now this is going... I don't have my intake vent named, do I? My active vent. So that thing is... there. It's in my farm, so I have to go into the farm and name it. I could go outside. Either way works. I'll go into the farm. It's this... Yeah, it's this. So this is the coolant intake active vent, which sucks air into our coolant tanks. So the input here should be the intake math. And the output will be the coolant intake vent. And whether it is on or not. Okay, done. So the intake is now automated. So when the outside temperature is less than 403, this will be true, and this will turn on the vent. All right, the other half of the system, and before I do that, I want to check on the condensing loop. So we still have steam to be condensed. Yep. Because our coolant is basically steam, like boil temperature. So it's basically can't cool it anymore until we get our coolant line cooler. So we're working on that. So in order to have an outflow, this is... We're going to need an active vent. Yeah, we'll need an active vent. Azure Storm, thank you for the resub. And all the useful YouTube comments, too. So this active vent is going to be the one that dumps our wasteline when it's hot. We are going to want... I can have it be right next to the intake vent. It doesn't really matter. So the intake vent is right there. I can have the wasteline be installed here on the other side. So I don't really need... yeah. Let's go get that hooked up. The only thing I'm going to need to do is wire it up once it's installed. Oh, and it looks like it's night out. No, it's still 413. It's not quite cool enough. So I'm going to wait until this hits 402 or whatever, just shy of 403, which then indicates that the intake vent should be on. So we'll be able to test here in just 1 second if the pressure in here starts climbing from 5.84. Yep, it's on. The intake vent is on. This just became true. This math compare is true. This logic writer is true. And the vent upstairs, outside, is now sucking cooler air into the vent. So that first intake logic is solid. It works. We just tested. And the proof is right here. Inwards limited because it's pressurized, I'm guessing. Actually, I'm not really sure why it's limited. What I might want to do is I might want to relocate the tank so it's like not interfering. And here is going to be the flowing out vent, the dumps, the contents of this tank. So if this is the coolant intake, outflow. Cool. Now let's do the logic for that bad boy. And this will help with normalizing, with stabilizing the temperature of our base, with the temperature of our water condensation coolant line. Like, it helps with a lot of stuff. Before I do the logic for that, though, quick pit stop. Cheers. Ooh, let's check potatoes as well. They're getting pretty close. They're plants, but not seeding. I don't see any harvest seeds yet, but they will be seeding soon. And it looks like I'm going to need more basins because we're and another grow light because we're basically maxed out here. But this room is breathable, I'm pretty sure. Yep. Breathable. I can breathe in there. Yeah! That's nice. Speaking of breathing. That. Alright, now for the logic. For the outflow logic. So, we're going to want a processor and a writer. Cool. So this is going to be the compare unit for the outflow, and then the writer for the outflow. I might need more cables. So, for the grow light logic, we already have solar angle being red. And that would be here. Grow light reader. This is the solar angle, which turns on at 90. So we already know the solar angle from this thing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this. So this is the coolant outflow logic memory. And I'm going to set this to 75. It's a bit arbitrary. But again, a little reminder. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to dump air out of this tank like once a day. I don't want to... I could set it to 90 if I wanted to. But I think that's going to be too much air. I don't want to like empty out the whole thing. I'm basically just wanting to refresh it. And this might need some tinkering. I haven't actually tried this, but whatever. We're going to do 75. So basically, between like roughly 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., we dump air out of our coolant tanks. That's what this is doing. So this memory is set to 75. And then this compare unit is going to be the coolant outflow logic compare. And I'll leave this above my head. Basically, it's the logic here is when the solar angle is less than, when this is less than 75, we'll dump. So when it's close to noon, we dump air, in other words, to dumb it down. So when the, I think this is called the grow light reader. Yes. When the grow light reader is less than the coolant outflow logic memory, then the act event will turn on. So the input here is the coolant outflow logic compare. And then the output is the coolant logic outflow act event. Oh, did I not name that thing? Coolant outflow act event. Oh, it's not plugged in. That's why I couldn't find it on the data network. Coolant outflow act event is on. So now, around midday, our tank, which is coming up now, actually, so we're about to be able to test it, our tank will be dumping its contents, because this is close to midday. That's what it looks like in the sky. And all of that hot coolant will then get refreshed. So once this is 75, which it's true now, walk over here. This compare unit's now throwing a 1. This logic writer's throwing a 1. And this act event is hypothetically on. So we should see the pressure in this dropping, which it is. I can see the moles of volatiles and CO2 going down. So hypothetically, the outflow is correct. Now, if I want to dump more air, I would increase that number from 75 to, let's say, 85 or 90. So really what it is trying to do is I'm trying to tweak it so that I almost empty it out every night. And then I fill it up. I mean, I almost empty it out during noon, and I fill it back up during the day. Later on, I might be able to get flow valves and do it faster. But active vents are good enough for now. So the logic for the for refreshing our coolant is working. And we should just check back daily-ish to make sure that it's not overpressurizing or getting too hot or whatever. But I think the logic for that is done. Thank you for tuning in to Stationeer's Brutal Vulcan, which originally streamed live on Twitch. If you have any questions for me, let me know in the comments below, but I'm not looking for feedback or backseating. If you'd like to catch a live stream of mine, Rodamont.com has my stream schedule and countdown timers to upcoming streams. If you'd like to join my online gaming community on Discord, Rodamont.com has a link to it, as does the description of this video. Thank you so very much for watching. Special thank you to my Twitch subscribers, Patreon patrons, and viewers like you that support the channel and made it all the way to the credits. Thank you so very much. I hope to catch you next episode or an upcoming stream. Catch you next time.